Hello, everybody out there in radio or internet land. Y'all listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. We're joined now by co-host Nora. Nora, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Oh, fantastic. And Lawrence is going to be joining us in a little bit too, kind of shifting into some national and international issues here. And right now, again, it's been a while since we've gotten together and talked about news. We were gone last week, as I mentioned earlier, the ice and stuff on the roads. And we're going to talk about ice a little bit more later in the show too. But for now, we're gonna give y'all a lot has been going on when it comes to the state of LGBTQ plus rights and particularly trans rights. So I think we're gonna start with that topic. And again, there's a lot of stories that we're gonna be talking about. I think one of the more recent and notable ones, especially it's kind of has a Michigan connection. It's um, and I don't know if you want to tee it off, Nora, go ahead. But
Yeah, of course. Some minor good news in terms of trans rights. The fact that, anyone could have predicted a couple weeks ago, the DeSantis campaign for president miraculously crashed and burned and got destroyed in Iowa. Did not make it to New Hampshire, and his political career is over. I'm pretty sure he's term limited for Florida. Not only that, Florida lost their state house majority, so I think people are finally realizing just how bad things have they've allowed things to get in there. So hopefully that'll turn around for that state. But it's important to note that like a big reason why we have all this anti-trans politics in the first place is because that's what DeSantis was trying to use to distinguish himself for Trump, especially with how bad the Republican establishment wanted him to be on the ballot instead of Trump. So we have a guest article. Evan Urquhart writes that. Hold on, let me get a. Oh, it's making me sign in. But anyways, point is, like the RNC wanted him really bad. They didn't like want to run Trump because he was toxic for the base, but like they couldn't outflank him. Previously, the thing that distinguished DeSantis and Trump was the fact that he like wasn't pushing vaccines or any COVID measures for that matter when Trump did at least a little. And but like when people started to forget about the pandemic, which by the way is still ongoing, uh, they pivoted to an anti-trans, policies, and they, made him a leader on that and pushed, every state house across the country to like, really ran that through Alex style. And it's, because of like this guy who's now gonna be a footnote in like the discussion of any presidential race info within this cycle, it has resulted will result in like the complete free fall of trans rights for perhaps decades. Like recently, for example, West Virginia and Missouri have been introducing multiple horrific anti-trans bills in like the same day. Even Utah bathroom ban, which is even worse than the Florida one, made it to this advanced to the Senate for a final vote. And like it's which by the way Utah is like a hub for a lot of flights, so it's also going to much like the airports in Florida, so that's going to be really awful for trans people trying to travel around the country. So it's continuing to get worse. It's gonna like even like I've talked before how like the non-red states aren't doing enough to like try to protect this to counteract this, Michigan being a great example. But like recently in Maine, we found out they were going to pass a pro-trans like interstate protection law, kind of like Illinois, California, New York, states like that have. But like due to like massive amounts of right-wing pressure, the very person who like sponsored the bill originally, had to pull it back themselves. So it's just really depressing seeing that happening. And we really need people to like maintain the political will to make things better in states where it's
yeah,
not getting worse.
I had a comment on that news story because I think Maine is a good example of kind of the fascist tendency to spread both misinformation and intimidation, and both of those were really factors on inhibiting the Maine bill. from going to the floor. Is it because essentially one of the stopping points, it would have protected trans minors with bigoted parents from basically trying to you know exercise their parental authority over their bodily autonomy. And a lot of dogpiling from conservative pundits and people basically just flooding these politicians with calls saying that it's somehow about the state stealing people's children away from them, or it is about the state exercising their authority over the family. Even though it's essentially about protecting young people from like I said, bigoted parents, keeping it simple.
Yeah, exactly. It was very similar to a pro-trans bill that was vetoed in California of all places. They, spread lies that would like result in like people losing custody, and the only thing it would have required is that the parent's acceptance of a kid's queer identity to be considered in custody cases, which is, but by the way, insane that it's not like something that's brought up in custody cases, like, already as, a part of that kind of discussion during a divorce. But like, not even like California is going to have it because, Gavin Newsom thinks he wants to be president one of these next cycles. So yeah, you would like I think a big thing that we're seeing is that like people's lives are getting like just absolutely destroyed just for like the failed aspirations of politicians who might just end up being footnotes in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, something similar about that. Like I think we talked about this last week, the fact that like multiple Democrats in the state house of I believe it was New Hampshire voted like in favor of an anti-trans bill that like it kind of proves that we really can't trust liberals on the issues like this. TYT is another great example from last year, and like we can't just assume that purple states like Michigan and Wisconsin are going to remain safe. Yet that these things have to be fought to make better or at least prevent to be made worse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And um, there was another article that because we've been talking about protecting trans youth, but we should be very clear-eyed that it's basically just a foot in the door for them to try to legislate a ban on the existence of trans people. There was another article, another again. Hats off to Aaron in the morning, who Aaron Reed, doing amazing coverage. We consult them a lot. And there's some leaked audio of this meeting between several conservative senators and representatives, which was facilitated by Brad Paquette from Michigan. And you can listen to the audio, and we'll link to it in the show notes. But um, probably the biggest takeaway from it that you also know is they openly talk about um, uh, doing a ban on trans healthcare for everyone. Representative Shriver from, oh, excuse me, uh, also from Michigan, sorry, basically went on to say, in terms of endgame, why are we allowing these practices for anyone? If we are going to stop this for anyone under 18, why not apply it to anyone over 18? It's harmful across the board, and it's something we need to take into consideration in terms of the end game. So scary stuff. He goes on to compare being trans to self mutilation and euthanasia. Um, and what I think the two takeaways from this is that we should be very clear-eyed. Well, especially we should tell our liberal friends to be very clear-eyed about what the actual trajectory and goals of these kind of far-right politicians are. They legitimately want to legislate a whole just class of people away from being able to exist as their authentic selves. And also worth noting, they did talk about part of this strategy session was talking about how to push these anti-trans policies even in states like Michigan, which are, quote unquote, still very blue, very liberal. Um, and again, it's something we are still seeing played out here in local school districts and systems. We talked about a story a while ago about Vicksburg and Matt DePerno basically suing the school district on behalf of some bigoted parents who were incensed that the school was basically referring to the child as the gender of their choice. Um, it's really important to look at how how these things are being discussed by the opposition. It's going to kind of bleed into some of these other stories too, because you kind of need to see what kind of hateful myths these people are telling themselves in order to justify what they're doing. Um, and yeah, despite the fact that, like, in a vacuum, this has been shown as something that is not necessarily a winner electorally, we have a lot of demagogues at the wheel who, for whatever reason, hate trans people and are doing whatever they can to, bring about legislation echoing that.
Yeah, and one thing that's worth mentioning is that how close this hits to home, like for people in Michigan, the fact that like, we really need to step up and make sure that we have a way to like get these protections passed ASAP and make them permanent. And even like, which even means going to like, consider people who live locally and live in our region. Because Brad Paquette, the representative mentioned in this article, is from Niles, Michigan, not too far from Kalamazoo. So people really need to, be watching, their neighbors and making sure they know just how bad things get if they don't like stand up for themselves. And like I think another reason why these continue to get so much more extreme is because again the Republicans don't have any good answer to any of our issues, especially immigration, which we'll talk about later. They got to like chase this paper tiger, and because of the way that Republican primaries work, like they always have to run to the right, no matter what. That's the era of Trumpism with or without Trump. You're on mute, I
I was
think.
muted. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And we'll be linking to some of these issues, or well, these articles, because there really is like a deluge of this stuff. It is a little what's the word? Well, it's scary. It's kind of scary the extent that all of this stuff is starting to not starting, but is continuing to ramp up into the election year. Um, and it's something that we need to, keep a very close eye on, especially right here in our backyard. So on the general topic of healthcare, Nora, I know you mentioned and this is worth mentioning to our listeners too. COVID is still out there, and it is ratcheted way up over this particular season. Excuse me. And I know you had a story kind of speaking about that, and just before we wrap up, just um, if you remember the last time we were talking about it a lot is in the fall, and we were criticizing kind of the way capitalism has made it more difficult to get the latest booster shot.
Mhm.
And yours truly I ended up getting COVID-19 in October, and before I could get the booster. So yeah, very real, very much really out there. But Nora, you go ahead with this story here.
Yeah, so first of all, the new shot is technically not a booster. It's a vaccine for the new variants. And because the original variants of COVID mostly don't exist anymore, you basically aren't vaccinated unless you have this new vaccine. So yeah, get that as soon as possible. Anywhere you would get them would be, they'd give you the one that came out after September, although only like 20% of the country currently has it. And as a result of that, and as a result of capitalism continuing to allow this to be a problem by, making people work remote, not work remote when they would, wouldn't have to work in person, for example. Like we're seeing high or very high levels of transmission all over the country. This is from a page called the People's CDC, which I recommend that everyone follow. They're on Twitter, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they are on Substack. But going off their Substack where they post their articles, yeah, the transmissions are really high. We're seeing a lot of hospitalizations. Last they updated, it was at a similar level to towards the very beginning of the pandemic, like in September 2020. Long COVID is becoming more of a thing, meaning you'll have to like get a lot of more debilitating side effects even after, you know, an infection would have ended. It's just all really scary stuff. So yes, please get your vaccine as quickly as possible. Get a high quality N95, a set of high quality N95 masks, and follow the People's CDC for more updates because the government just wants to ignore it and make you keep going back to work.
Yep, absolutely. As I've said since the beginning, the real conspiracy theory in all of this is all the working class basically being pushed into vulnerable spaces in order to keep the profits going despite the risk of getting sick. And yeah, try to get those boosters. From what I have gathered, they are more available now than when they came out. The launch of the new vaccine was awful. It was I compared it to like trying to get a PS5 on launch day. It just wasn't happening. That's not something you want to say about like something that
Oh
protects you
man.
from a deadly disease.
Well, in case it helps, it's a lot easier to get it's a lot easier to get the new vaccine than it is to get a PS5 in 2024. So, I
Yeah.
bet, like for example, it's free. So
Yeah. There
everyone
you
go
go.
get that schedule. Like most Walgreens and CVS will have a clinic that'll allow you to do that. You can schedule one online. And good luck to everyone out there trying to stay
Yeah.
safe. One
Hmm.
thing I think is like kind of a good segue is that somebody pointed out online that the normalization of the amount of deaths that resulted in like COVID-19 early on kind of like primed a lot of people for maybe being more willing to accept the genocide in Gaza. And they compared that to one of the big pandemics of the 1920s leading up to, a similar genocide that we're all familiar with afterwards. So if we want to talk about updates coming out of Gaza, is that something that you'd regularly segue to?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And there's a lot to talk about with that too. I know Nora's not going to be with us the whole time, so I'm going to let you kind of pick out what pieces you want to speak on. But there's a lot. There's the International Court of Justice. We've got some more stories about what's going on here in the U.S., the opposition, and yeah, I'm just gonna do this a quick hit because I couldn't contain myself when I saw this, and I'm sure Lawrence will probably have some to say about it too when he's on the show. But Nancy Pelosi
Oh
was
boy.
she's been interviewed on I believe it was Face the Nation or maybe it was Good
It was
Morning
one of the
America.
CNN shows.
Yeah, it's one of the CNN shows. Yeah,
I think so.
and she goes on to say that she thinks some people are sincere when they're calling for genocide in Gaza, but a lot of it probably is Russian propaganda and election interference. Oh my God. Um, yeah, I don't
She
know about
specifically
you,
said
but
that people calling for a ceasefire are Putin's message and is calling on the FBI to investigate pro-Palestinian protesters and student groups' finances as Russian directed. And this is if you need a reminder, like a lot of liberals that like on like the media were talking about like the BLM protests of 2020 as if they were also boosted by Russia. But of course, that was before like Nancy Pelosi like, and all of her friends put on kente cloths and took a knee, but while giving more money to the cops.
yeah.
So
I,
yeah,
I think the goofiest thing is just how not new all of this is. Like you can go back to the civil rights movement of the 1960s and the literal just copy and paste. the same accusations, like, oh, the MLK is a puppet of the Kremlin, or it's like racists with signs that it's like integration is communism, kind of stuff. But yeah, it persists to this day. And again, anytime there's a legitimate problem in America, it's probably Russia's fault for spreading discontent.
But you guys got to understand that Russia like forced Hillary Clinton to not campaign in Wisconsin in
Yeah,
2016.
yeah.
That's what happened.
It's a
or
sophisticated
or
operation,
Michigan,
folks. Yeah,
or
or
Michigan.
Michigan.
True.
Yeah. Oh, Lawrence has joined us. How are you doing today, Lawrence?
Man, it's up and down mostly.
Hmm.
I don't have my camera set up yet. I'm still getting to the house and getting everything settled. So my apologies for being late. Things overlapped.
Oh,
So
that's quite all right. We were just
just get
just
just, just give me a
hitting
few
on
minutes to set up and I'll cut my camera on.
all right. We were just hitting on the topic of Gaza, and I'm trying to think. There are a
We were
couple
we
of
were
other
we were on the part where
yeah,
Nancy Pelosi was calling everyone supporting a ceasefire like a Russian agent, basically.
yeah. Yeah. um,
Oh my God. Like
yeah.
tell me you're joking. Tell me that's a joke.
Unfortunately, I am not. I will
No.
leave a screenshot for the source. I have not seen the video itself, but like I don't know. I kind of don't want to see Nancy Pelosi's face on video. I'm sure you understand.
So oh my God. Okay, so to get this straight, people for by Amnesty International records, over 25,000 people have died, and over 10,000 of those 25,000 have been children. So seeing this in a population that is 4 times the size of Detroit, right? That's like that has 4 times the population of Detroit being slaughtered, and everyone who's like, hey, maybe we should stop all of the slaughtering. We're somehow connected to Russia. I say this all the time on this show, and I want people to recognize this or remember this when they're thinking about politics and the world around them, that the hardest thing to escape is your own perspective. And you can see when your own perspective blinds you from the world around you. That statement that everyone who wants peace or people who want peace may be Russian agents. What does Russia have to do with the slaughter of innocent civilians in the Middle East? That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, anybody who's been listening to our show since 2016, like again, this is one of the people like Nancy Pelosi established. This is like one of their greatest hits. They just when there's a controversial issue, particularly when they are on the wrong side of, it is all the fault of foreign propagandists for making us think about this stuff, or be concerned about it. And again, it's pretty ridiculous, particularly, I mean, like the Democrats, quote unquote base, or I really should say the people they uh, uh, have to force to vote for them every 4 years because the other side is so much worse. They actively just take a huge dump all over. Like, again, 80% of Democrats nationally support a ceasefire. And here's Nancy Pelosi coming on national mainstream media television saying, well, a lot of those people probably are just fooled by Russians. It's like, I don't think you want to insult your own base's intelligence like that. That's just not good politics.
No, that's the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Republican Party, they will insult your intelligence because they understand that their base isn't that intelligence. I'm sorry for the Republican voter viewers and voters that are watching our show. Y'all know it's true. Some of your voters believe that Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi was responsible for January 6th. Okay, they believed Trump when he said that you could put bleach in your system and it would cure COVID. Okay, these are the
Some
same
of them,
people.
some of them believe that Cobra Commander is leading an army of MS-13 thugs across the border. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. But yeah,
Oh,
that's all that.
no, no, wait. These are the same people who say that we have a migrant crisis. And yes, I believe that it's a crisis. But
Not in
these
the
are
way
the
they're
same,
saying it.
no. But these are the same people who are saying we should not help. We should not do any type of legislation to help with the crisis until next year, even though it is an imminent crisis. Think about that in any other context. If your house is on fire, would you say, hey, we shouldn't, it is a crisis. My house is on fire, but don't worry, you should put it out next year.
That's
Okay,
something that
well,
like actually kind of ties back to the issue at Palestine because recently at the International Court of Justice, they found that Israel was having genocidal intent when doing this, but they stopped short of calling for a ceasefire. They said they would continue to examine Israel's actions over the next month, but like even though it's like the most clear case of genocide you could possibly ask for, like you don't wait it out and see what happens. Like you stop that by any means necessary, you know? Like this is another example of like an eminence, crisis with, that isn't fully grasping the urgency of it. However, it is still a good thing that the ICJ did rule against Israel by a massive margin because any pressure valve to push against this, belligerent occupying government is a good one. To kind of break it down more on what the ICJ specifically ruled, they ruled that Israel shall take all measures within its power to prevent genocidal acts against Palestinians. Already, they're not doing that. Israel will ensure that its army does not commit any genocidal acts. They're still bombing hospitals where people were told to evacuate. Israel will prevent and punish public incitement to commit genocide against Palestinians. I don't know if any of the higher government officials have said, the same rhetoric that they've been sourced on for the same ruling, but IDF TikTok is a thing. Examine that at your own peril. Israel will ensure provision of urgent services and humanitarian aid to Gaza, also not happening. In fact, a lot of Israeli on-the-ground protesters are preventing these aid trucks from going in themselves, even where the government might let them in otherwise, which they usually don't. Let's be clear, and it's never enough, but that's a whole other discussion. Israel will ensure the preservation of evidence related to allegations of genocide. I mean, like, I think it's hard for them to not leave evidence with how many videos we're seeing of them bombing, but I digress. Israel will submit a court in 1 month showing its compliance with these orders. Now, I don't know how they'll pull it off within a month, but I guess we'll see. Like,
Now, when it came to the international court going after Rwanda when they had a genocide, or I'm trying to think of some of the others that happened.
like Yugoslavia.
Yeah. Um, those cases, if you look at the cases, it did take them a month, or other words, out before the initial when they did the initial assessment to then calling it. So what they did, I wasn't surprised by, because if you look at the history of the court, it's kind of their standard practice. But at the same time, it, it's also shows that Israel's privilege on the international stage, especially because the United States runs, and also because of international courts and international standing, because the United States is looked at as the big bully in the world court, and that our little brother is beating up some other helpless kid. We're just kind of like, hey, y'all better not jump in. Yeah, y'all can condemn them, but don't condemn them too hard. You know, that it's that's kind of the vibe that you get when like 'cause I saw the proceedings, and I'm like you. I believe that they should have called for a ceasefire. I also believe that it is a genocide by the standards of international law. I wish that the courts system wouldn't take so long to get to that point, but they're going to do their due diligence. But the South African case, if you have the time to listen to how South Africa laid out that case and how I think what I forgot what other country joined South Africa in that in 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 their proceedings. It was outstanding. It was wonderful to watch. It was
I
horrifying. It's horrifying, but it was crazy to watch.
I
It
believe the other
was,
country that joined them, they did have at least one or two lawyers from Ireland, as well as
Yeah.
the support from I'm blanking on the specific names, but it was one of it was a country in Southeast Asia and another country in Africa. I'm just blanking on it right now, but it did get support. Meanwhile, the case for Israel was supported by, the usual suspects, US, UK, and Germany. Germany, by the
Okay.
way,
Okay. When
is
Israel,
worth
when I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when Ireland joined South Africa, when you think about Ireland and you think about how the IRA and how Ireland fought back against the UK during that whole struggle, how they were oppressed people by an international superpower, and then they had to deal with it and come to some type of peace. It speaks a lot about one warring factions and how they are not going to get along and how these warring factions not getting along needing to come to an agreement because they're neighbors, right? It speaks a lot about the humanity and integrity of the people, not in South Africa and in Ireland, to bring it to international court, because they could have went right along with the UK, with the United States, but being oppressed people, seeing other people being oppressed, it hits you different
yeah,
when you
it's
see that
those
solidarity.
two countries specifically. It's like we've heard this song before. It's like
Yeah, you
we
know what I'm
know
saying?
what to think.
yeah,
Um,
we
exactly.
we've seen this story play out.
yeah. Nora, I just want to let you finish real quick. I had kind of a comment about the ICJ, but I don't know if you had a thought you wanted to wrap up there.
Right. So, one thing that's like, worth mentioning about Germany is that like part of the reason, like not just because they think that it's gonna like, redeem them for doing the Holocaust. It's just by supporting Israel, like which in fact is doing quite the opposite. It's showing how they're supporting another genocide, and a big reason why they're doing that is because they're also selling weapons to Israel at massive amounts, and a big amount of their World War II reparations also goes to Israel. So they're another one of the big countries that's funding this genocide right now. What's also how this
Um,
is also connected is the fact that like Germany at the same time is going more into its like fascist past by allowing the AFD to gain massive gains in the parliament, which is basically their equivalent of the Republicans, let's be real, and like intentionally oppressing like Palestinian and Middle Eastern neighborhoods within their country in order to quell resistance to this kind of like to resistance to like this new genocide. For example, they're even considering a bill in to make to require an oath to Israel as part of becoming a German citizen for naturalized citizens, which is an insane thing to do, by the way. So as we can see, like this, a lot of countries in the Western world have not learned from their horrific colonial expansions of the past. And I wish I'd have more to talk about this topic, but I actually have a really bad headache right now, so I'm gonna have to call it. Thank you so much for having me on, and you have a great rest of your day.
All right, you too, Nora. Hope you feel better. Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to kind of piggyback off of some Nora was saying, which is, it's like, I've actually been reading like a few articles about kind of the weird relationship of post-war Germany and Israel, and um, so others have kind of described a sense of like there's this feeling that they have to kind of ignore the crimes of the Israeli state as some sort of a penance for the Holocaust. Now, of course, like the decolonial or correct answer. Sorry, my cat's getting into my Christmas tree. Is get out of there. Go. No, that's what you got. Is is you shouldn't let like never again means never again for anybody. But when you're still kind of running like this kind of capitalist imperial logic, it's more like we need to let the Jewish people of Israel have a get out of jail free card when it comes to this stuff. Of course, is an absolute wrong way of looking at it, and I think part of it too, kind of referring back to what you were talking about, Lawrence, how there's kind of a specific reason they didn't call for a ceasefire, and it's a very kind of realpolitik reason, which is to say, the ICJ, in my opinion, kind of went about as far as it could. But if you were to call for a ceasefire, that is something that requires an enforcement mechanism. And to be clear, that's something that was not going to be enforced by the Western powers, Germany, United States, the UK, etc. So you would have ended up with a decision that was binding in the International Court of Justice that would have been essentially ignored by some of the world's most powerful states.
I can give you
I
to piggyback off that. I'm not trying to interrupt you,
well,
but
I was pretty much done with it.
there was something that I was reading about this topic a little while ago. I think I shared it in our group chat. If I didn't share it in our group chat, I did. I'll share it. I will share it and then put it in so we can put it all in the description below. Um, there was articles written back in 2017 and 2016 about and when it comes to genocide, talking about genocide in Israel. Israel has had a record and has been accused multiple times of selling arms to genocidal regimes that were committing a genocide at the time. Uh, um, uh, Al Al Jazeera, this Israeli Times, Haaretz. Shout out to all of them because they all wrote about this. You can all look it up yourselves. And shout out to these print journalists because they're out here doing the Lord's work. But I'm reading from Al Jazeera right now. 6% Israel became the sixth largest arms dealer in the world as a country, as a country, even though we sell weapons to them, they sell weapons to other countries. And it said that when the United States and the UK would not sell weapons to certain countries, they would to Israel because Israel would. But their arms and the things that they have sold has been connected to uh, atrocities like Rwanda, uh, Chile, Argentina, South Sudan, um, uh, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Haiti, like all these places that were either in apartheid and or committing a genocide, they sold weapons to. So in it so it's not surprising for me when we talk about that country and the dealings that they have done over the years with other countries committing atrocities that themselves committing atrocities have been ignored for years. This isn't the first time we've even seen Israel shoot and kill innocent civilians. Recently, they shot and killed a innocent man that was doing an interview. I think they were doing an interview with Al Jazeera or one of those international outlets in Gaza, and the IDF shot him right after the interview. They had to pick up his body and move him. Uh, they had to pick up the man's body, and they took his body with the white flag that they had over them. Like I'm sad that the international court is not immediately taking action, because taking immediate action would help save lives. And I know they have to do their due diligence.
Yeah,
It's just that understanding the history that this country has done, the things that they have done and got away with, it is not surprising that yes, what Hamas did was bad. What Hamas did on October 7th, the people who orchestrated that, the people who participated in those horrific acts should be punished. And Israel has a right to go after the people who did those atrocities, and those atrocities, it should be punished. But you cannot go farther by punishing the civilians, even to the point where Bibi Netanyahu recently was saying he's trying to wipe out the Palestinians from the river to the sea. If I remember correctly, weeks ago there were Palestinian protesters, American protesters, even people who I like and love, was being chastised. Um, Mark Lamont Hill, one of my favorite journalists, got fired from CNN for saying to the river to the sea. He got canned. Now you have the president of Israel saying, "Hey, we need to wipe them out to the river to the sea." We don't see that same condemnation. That goes to
yeah,
that
and
privilege that we're talking
I
about.
this want to respond with a couple of things. There's a poll. You may have seen this making the rounds on social media, but there was a poll done amongst both Israelis and Palestinians, and amongst both populations, overwhelmingly favored a one-state solution. But here's the thing. When kind of follow-up question is asked what that looks like to Israelis, the majority of them said it looks like kicking all of the Palestinians out. When they polled the Palestinians asking the same question, he said it looks like a state where Jews and Muslims and Arabs can live together with equal rights.
And
So
Christians, because there are
and
Christians over
Christians,
there
yeah,
who are also getting killed and also getting detained.
yeah,
So
and it's something that's getting missed. It's kind of ironic by how all the evangelical Christians who are like rah rah Israel is in midst of all the carnage. Israel has been bombing and killing some of the oldest Christian families and some of the oldest churches in the world. Palestine is one of the last places where there's like real indigenous Christianity that you could trace back thousands of years. Um,
I
and
don't
so
know
yeah,
if you saw recently that they also ran over a bunch of graves. I don't know if you saw that.
I,
Yeah, you
I
saw.
I
Yeah,
did hear about that. Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Um, I wanted
like I
to.
said, multiple things. Like we said, and I want to make sure that we keep saying multiple things can be true at the same time. I cannot tell you I cannot tell you that you cannot hit somebody back when they hit you.
Mhm,
I can tell you when you've gone too far. You know what I'm saying? What
mhm.
Hamas did was dumb. Hamas are a bunch of idiots, and they need to be held accountable for what they did.
I think it's also worth
Israel also has to be held accountable too.
pointing out too that the Israeli military is capable of making pinpoint strikes. There was actually a news story a couple months ago about them specifically raiding an area of compound for somebody they were targeting, and of course we have there's the famous Munich movie, but Israel prides itself on being able to find specific individuals and take them out. That's like their thing, and you know that it's some BS when they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth saying, "Oh yes, we're capable of doing that, but we need to just firebomb all of Gaza in order to get the bad guys." It is absolute bad faith, and a lot of Israelis are saying so as well. A lot of the families of the hostages are very upset with the government's belligerence in not negotiating with Hamas. And again, as kind of I said, since this originally happened, um, you can look at the attacks, you can look at the follow up, but I think ultimately the fault really does lie at the hands of the Israeli government, who has been beating down the population for so long. Something that gets kind of missed in all of the kind of hand-wringing debates about responsibility is just it's physics, it's weather. If you oppress people for too long, they're going to snap back. It's not always good when how they snap back, but they are. And One kind of follow up too was kind of another segue into suppression of dissent here in the States. You're talking about the export of Israeli arms internationally. Well, one, I'm actually currently reading a book about this. The Palestine Laboratory: How Israel Exports the Technology of Occupation Around the World. It's by Anthony Lowenstein. Very timely book. And especially as we segue into this next little story, talking about how some of those um, uh, what was I going to say? Anti-protest munitions and stuff have found their way here to the States. Not to mention, we talked about in many previous episodes how many police departments around the country are trained by the IDF. Israel also has some of the most sophisticated surveillance technology in the world. We've run stories about Pegasus. And Recently at Columbia University, an investigation was opened up because some students that were holding a protest in solidarity with Gaza were attacked um, by some individuals who sprayed them with a very unique chemical compound slash weapon. And Just as a quick aside, so we share our news stories together in this big group chat, and one of our comrades, who's a friend of ours, who has actually done work in Gaza, the West Bank, being a medical worker, saw the story, and before even reading it, they're like, "Oh no, skunk has made it to America." Skunk is one of the most insidious little compounds the IDF come up with to deal with Palestinian protesters. It's basically a chemical weapon that gets sprayed, and it lasts for months. It is notoriously difficult to clean off and remove from your body. And as the name implies, it just makes it horrible smell, leads to health problems, makes you difficult to be around for weeks to months at a time. Um, and Really, it outrageous that we would have because it hasn't been confirmed yet, but there's heavily suspected that there were some IDF soldiers involved in spraying some of these Columbia students, and it really just is unacceptable at any level. You think of a country that's ostensibly supposed to be our ally, and they are here on U.S. soil, spraying these really like ghastly and gross munitions on American citizens, American protesters. Um,
It's not
excuse me.
surprise. It's not surprising when you think about how many laws, how many states have on their books that if you speak out against Israel, if you're a part of BDS, if you speak out against Israel, they will take your funding. They will take away grants from you. They will take away your livelihood. You will be fired. Uh, in Texas, I think there's some laws like that here in Michigan. Where if you use your First Amendment right to say we don't financially support companies that deal with this country, that's our First Amendment right. Our tax-paying right. They will take money from you. They will take your livelihood from you. So I'm not surprised that the other part of the other arm uh that that is a part of that system is, hey, we will use their tactics that they use on innocent civilians on our innocent civilians. It's not like we're not that far. We're not that far removed from Black Lives Matter protests that happened all over the country, and we saw the new multiple police departments treat innocent protesters like they're criminals. We're not that far removed from seeing them push over elderly people, abuse and beat and pepper spray innocent civilians. This is par for the course. This is this is the norm, but it's not normal, and there's a difference. this and it may it for me it underlies the problem that our country and our leadership in our country has. We're willing to let this country, Israel, who has universal health care, who we give them the Iron Dome, one of the best defense systems in the world. Our soldiers and their soldiers train with each other all the time. We give them billions of dollars. So much so that our president went around Congress to give them more money. It it's only logical to think that some of the worst characteristics that government has, that their government does, and that their police state does, would bleed over into ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to mention this is going on concurrently or simultaneously. There was just it was a resolution in Congress condemning South Africa's genocide case. And just for some context, here are some numbers for you. 80% of registered Democrats in the US support a ceasefire. 57% of independents supported a ceasefire. 56% of registered Republicans support a ceasefire. So clearly, a majority of people in the United States support a ceasefire. In Congress, however, you have every single Republican and more than 60 of the House Democrats joining a resolution to condemn the ICJ case against Israel. And basically talking in the language of it, they call South Africa's case grossly unfounded and expressed quote unquote disgust at the ICJ filing. And much like the Israeli defense, they did not respond at all to the actual case that South Africa was presenting, which was perhaps one of the most thorough documented cases that's ever been brought before the ICJ. Just just hours and hours and hours of footage, documents, words straight out of the horse's mouth. You know, there's usually like one of the most difficult parts of these cases is proving intent, and they've just got stacks and stacks and stacks of statements of everybody from IDF soldiers to the highest ranks of the Israeli government being very clear about what they're doing in Gaza and why they want to do it. But
It it's very easy when they go on national television and they snitch on themselves. They said it out loud multiple times. So it wasn't that they were playing video from 30, 40, 50 years ago. They were playing interviews from weeks, days ago. Like, this is what your interior secretary said. This is what your president said. This is what your general said. Bro, y'all are making it very clear that innocent, and you don't believe that they said, I think it was Nelly, or it was a female, it was their female representative. Uh it was one of their male one of their interior representatives that said there's no innocent people in Gaza. And I'm paraphrasing, but that was basically the statement. There's no there, and they were saying that there's no innocent people because they voted for that government. I want y'all to remember this. And for those who do not understand history or who don't know history or not, who are not political junkies like us, that same justification was the same justification that Bin Laden had when he orchestrated the plan to do 9/11 against us. That what happened on 9/11 was our fault, the citizens' fault, because we voted for the government, we voted for the politicians and the governments that was doing the atrocities in their country. What those Israeli politicians were saying are identical to a terrorist that they would call a terrorist. And they're saying that about innocent people in a country that they occupy.
Also worth
That
noting, I mean, that's an excellent point, and I really, I didn't know that actually, and but I mean, it's also worth knowing because they've trotted out this talking point a lot. The average age in Gaza is 19. Literally, the
yeah,
majority, the majority of the population in Gaza was not old enough to vote in the previous election.
I want to give everybody context. Just this is gonna sound really crazy, especially because of us saying this. The last time that they had a vote for a government in that country was in 2006. I wanted to remind everybody that the two people that you are listening to graduated high school in 2006,
Yeah,
and I graduated when I was 17.
yeah.
I I grad I wasn't even 18 when I graduated. So so when people say that, they're forgetting that half the population of Gaza, like you said, half the population of Gaza is children, and most of them weren't even alive and or didn't vote for the government that runs their country. And the people that the if you don't in best case scenario, because I don't want to straw man people's argument. I like to steel man people's argument. Best case scenario, you say that Hamas doesn't want um is not an agent of peace. Okay? Fair enough. What is Israel's what is Israel, the government of Israel, doing to find a partner in the Palestinian government, Palestinian people, Palestinian group, Palestinian politicians? Who are the other bodies that are for peace that you can work with? And if you're telling me that you can't find none, and you're saying all of them are guilty, then you are acting just like the terrorists that you would condemn. Because that's what Hamas would say about you, even though we're going to ignore the fact. Shout out to Haaretz and shout out to Al Jazeera and some of the other outlets that I've been reading. The Intercept, The Lever, The Guardian. Shout out to all of them that's done multiple studies and multiple stories about how it was Benjamin Netanyahu, the current president, and his cabinet and others who helped prop up Hamas. They help give funding and support to Hamas. So you help create a monster that you can then continue fighting because you, in their plan, do not want Palestine to have their own state. And that gives you justification to say we don't have a partner of peace that we can work with. So we are justified in continuing to occupy and steal land that's not ours.
Yeah, and it's super important for our listeners to, I think, especially understand this historical context is so important to understand why Israel is behaving the way it is right now, why it has been so lax about trying to negotiate the hostages back, how and why they responded to the October 7th attacks with by enacting a genocide. It's like they they were waiting for these conditions to present themselves, and as you mentioned they literally tipped the scales to get Hamas in power literally directly funding them, while simultaneously marginalizing more liberal groups like the PLO, because again, in their calculus, liberal organizations like them, or more explicitly Marxist socialist organizations like the People's Front for the Liberation of Palestine, there's a concern on the part of Israeli government that those groups are predisposed to more international solidarity than Hamas, which is explicitly Islamist, and it could certainly be kind of read as more kind of militant and unreasonable than either of those two other groups.
I
But
I still go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, so yeah, it's important to understand that context because a lot of the situation was engineered directly by Israel itself. And I'm talking above and beyond simply just the mistreatment of people in Gaza. I am talking about the actual nuts and bolts of who is in charge right now, what their priorities are, and the kind of situation that has developed in that area since October 7th.
Yeah, and this is the reason why, for me, it goes back to, if it goes back to when we were having this conversation, when we had the 6-person panel or 5-person panel, that both sides, I feel like, yes, there are groups in Palestine that are not Hamas, that do not believe in that does not have the same history or baggage that Hamas has, right? That that the Palestinian people can support, can be standing behind, and all of that good stuff. Is Israel, who's the people who are occupying them, the people who control their water, their food supplies, their gas supplies, who has literally shut down their hospitals, right? Are they working towards peace with those groups? Because as of right now, you have bombed and killed most of the people that you would, or jailed, illegally jailed, most of the people that you should be trying to work with. And the only thing that you are doing with their actions, no one else's, not Hamas's actions, because you can't control them, not the civilians' actions, because you're literally harming them, but their actions, Israel's actions. What are they doing to try to come to peace? Because bombing and harassing and torturing your way to peace is like trying to save your virginity by having sex. You're doing it backwards. you're doing it backwards. You're literally like it's it's it doesn't make logical sense if what you are trying to do is come to a peaceful solution. You wouldn't be indiscriminately bombing civilian neighborhoods. You wouldn't be destroying hospitals. You wouldn't be destroying colleges. You wouldn't be killing journalists. And that's what they have done. There isn't, I will continue to say, there's no good guys in this situation. There's no heroes in this situation, except for one. Actually, I take that back. There are 2 heroes in this situation there's multiple heroes. The journalists who are still there covering the news, the doctors that are still there who are continuing to operate in a war zone. There are multiple stories, and I wanted to get to this, one of the happy stories. There were multiple Israeli men, young men who got drafted into the service of the IDF, and they are refusing to go, so they are going to jail. They're putting these people in prison for months for saying no. I don't want to be a part of this occupation. And there are multiple stories of multiple Israeli young men and women who are refusing to join the idea, even though they're being drafted, which they are heroes. Those stories should be told and should be celebrated more often. And we don't talk about it enough. That there are people, even in Israel, that are resisting what the Israeli government is doing. And there are groups that are resisting. I think the last time I saw a poll, I think it was earlier, it was Monday. It was like around 30 to 35% of Israeli citizens don't support Bibi Netanyahu, and they don't support what they're doing in Gaza. You will want that to be 50, but we're not there yet. And I can't get mad because I also remember after 9/11, again, I was in middle school, we was in middle school, but the country wasn't here for peace after that, even though we were live, even though we were attacked. But people with cooler heads need to prevail in this situation. And those who are running the government of Israel are not those cooler head people. They want their pound of flesh.
Yep, and land. I mean, this
Yes,
is a colonial problem. We should,
inland.
yeah, just yeah. It's some really gross stuff. Like I've seen ads coming from like real estate developers. It's like, hey, there's a bunch of new land. I'm like, oh my God! Like you're not even waiting for the blood to dry.
Oh, Doug, are you
Mm.
are you are you kidding me? This is America. Did you not remember us covering the story of what was it? When the submarine that was going down to the Titanic blew up. You remember we covered the story that the next day the people who ran that company put out an ad for submersible drivers? Like the next day, the
Mm.
next day, son.
Oh man.
This is the world we live in, son.
Yeah.
Like, wait.
Okay. So
Let's get to let's
I
get
want
to
to
some
get to
other
our
news.
I want to get to our next story, and
Yeah.
this next one is big. It's okay. So it's really hard to shop me these days. Like I just especially like it's more my job for this show is to find the news. A lot of it is really depressing and disturbing. So I'm not somebody who I don't let myself to be easily shocked by news stories, but this one got me, and it got me for a couple reasons.
Are you talking about Ben Shapiro and Tom McDonald's rap song? That
Don't remind me
that oh,
that
oh, oh,
I
that
still
is
can't
some
believe that actually is real. I thought that was
oh
AI
oh
generated or something.
okay.
But
That is
all right,
okay. I want to tease that
okay.
because I
I have a heavy
ask
topic,
hip
but
hop heads.
yeah, just
Yeah,
lighten it
ask
up a
hip hop
little bit
heads.
before we.
Yeah.
I have not watched it. I cannot bring myself to do so.
I've only seen excerpts,
All
and
right.
bruh, boy, the garbage, man, is high. The
Mm,
mayonnaise is high. Okay, anyway, go
yeah. All
ahead.
right. So, okay. Uh,
We will talk about
that'll be
that.
a
We'll talk about
bonus
that.
episode. We'll deconstruct it line by line. I'm gonna need some beer for that one though. Okay.
Oh man.
Okay, it's a shocking news story. So it's shocking for two reasons. One, just the actual substance of it, and two, the virtual non-reaction from mainstream media and even a lot of progressive outlets really weren't talking about this, which is very strange considering the implications of it and just how it was. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, and some of you probably aren't, the quote unquote border crisis and what's been going on in Congress. You kind of referenced it earlier. They're playing football with Biden's legislative package, which would have probably given Republicans more concessions on immigration than they have years. Which, if you're on the left or you care about immigrant rights, is terrible. But at the same time, this is going on when, on a policy level, the Republicans are going to get way more of their draconian provisions in than they have in a long time. You have this crisis in Texas where Governor Abbott has been ordered by. Now, if you remember a story we covered a few months ago, Governor Abbott has taken to himself to install a bunch of crazy, like jigsaw style death traps on the border. I'm only slightly exaggerating. We're talking about buoys on the Rio Grande with spinning circular saws. People have actively been getting chopped up in this stuff when they've been trying to cross
Yeah,
the border.
actual raise. He has raised. The thing in particular that that Andy is getting at is that the reason why the federal the federal officials went down to Texas is because razor wire that you would see on prisons, and the same type of razor wire that you see people cut are on top of prisons and jail facilities and things of that nature. They have put on connecting buoys in the Rio Grande, and that two children and a mother drowned, bleeding to death because of the razor wire that they put up, and that the Biden administration was like, "Yo, what are you doing? This is inhumane. Stop that."
So
And
you
Greg Abbott
can't
was
have
like,
like yeah,
and
like
Greg Abbott basically said, "Nah, I'm gonna put a pin in it. I heard what you said. We're gonna put a pin in it. Hey, yo, put up more razor. put up
yes.
more wire."
So the plot continues to thicken. So now we've got razor wire
So,
and
so
again
you,
circular
do you want me to?
saws
Yeah, go ahead.
in the water. And on January 12th, some National Guard members at a park in Texas were trying to get access the river to save three migrants who are actively drowning while crossing the Rio Grande. And two, no, I'm sorry, three dead migrants and two migrants who were still struggling in the water. The Border Patrol was prevented from doing this by local Texas law enforcement, which led to a very rare happening. The Supreme Court, the Supreme Court that overthrew Roe v. Wade and is actively trying to repeal all of our rights, even they, the most reactionary extreme Supreme Court in history, ruled by a 5-4 margin that federal agents should be able and have the ability to remove the razor wire at the Texas border. Governor Abbott was like, no, we're gonna keep our little torture devices on the border, not gonna do anything about it. And then here's where the story gets really wild and a little crazy. 25 Republican governors issued a joint statement supporting Texas in its border dispute with the federal government. And some of them have even gone on to things like Newsmax and invoked the idea of a civil war. At least a dozen of these states have pledged to send their National Guard to defend Texas's right to have razor wire at the border. And so part of what was shocking about the story, just on a moral level, um, sometimes it's difficult for reactionaries in America to really surprise me with their depravity. This one did, because you're talking about you're literally threatening to start a civil war, which hey, if we look at the historical parallels here, the original Civil War was also about a state's right to be violently racist. So,
Oh, no, 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 no. It's not just. It's just
like
not
poetry, it
just violently
rhymes.
racist. It's they want states' rights to be inhumane, to other human beings, and it wasn't just being racist. We're talking about murderers, rapists, human traffickers. Uh, uh, we're talking about the worst of the worst uh of human nature for profit. That was what the states' rights was, and this is the reason what Nikki Haley couldn't say. This is what Donald Trump refuses to admit. This is what um the other dude from South Carolina, the black dude from South Carolina, Tim Scott doesn't understand about how America is a racist country. So we went from, and we always joke about how history may not always repeat, but it does rhyme. We went from states' rights to be inhumane to black people and to brown people, and legally being allowed to be, to us having states' rights to legally allowing us to be inhumane, cruel people to people from across the border, who other human beings that don't look like us.
Yeah,
It
and
doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't
I
rhyme.
I do often so I don't often dip my toes in the right wing and ruling class propaganda because for my own sanity, like that stuff is it's pretty disgusting. But something about the story is like I need to find out like how are these people justifying this? Why do people think this is okay, and why do they support it? And you just okay. Here's just like a couple of random these rant comments, random. And I just found these and like just friends walls and comment sections and stuff. It's called border security. Thank you, Texas, for wanting to protect our country. Fentanyl, I don't know what fentanyl is destroying lives. Why don't liberals care? Oh, right, they care about having new voters. Um, a lot of rhetoric about national security, preventing. There's armies of young men crossing the border, and like there's something terrifying. In,
Wait.
yeah,
Before you finish, we gotta go back. We gotta go back two things.
yeah,
Fentanyl and so there's a couple different things. Fentanyl is funny. I don't care.
yeah,
I don't care.
yeah.
Look, it's gonna hurt people's
Not
feelings.
the best
It's funny.
spellers
It's
reactionaries,
not.
but
It's like it's funny. It's funny.
yeah.
It's whack, but it's funny. Forgetting the fact that most of the drugs, like fentanyl and other things that are being pumped into cities and are killing Americans, are made by American companies. Like, oh my God. Okay, but anyway,
Paul's coming from
um,
inside the house, folks. Is it?
yeah, right, yeah. The other thing is that do I think that there is a crisis of the? I believe we're gonna steel man. We're gonna steel man the argument, right? Let's steel man the argument that yes, there isn't that many. There's not millions of people crossing the border, but let's say there is, right? Let's say let's agree with the framing of their statement. It's not right, but we're gonna agree with it. What would be the correct thing to do if you call your
Oh, Lawrence, I think you're muted. How's
sorry?
that? There we
Oh,
go.
you hear me?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah, what would be the
I got a
correct
phone call.
response to
No, what would be the
millions
correct
of needy
response?
migrants? Yeah.
So you call yourself a Christian conservative, right? That means you believe in God. That means you believe that that you follow Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth, who said, uh, uh, that said you that talked about feeding those who are hungry, feeding those that are sick, not forgetting those who are in jail, um, giving shelter to those that are homeless, right? That Jesus, the Jesus that himself would have been a migrant, right? That Jesus. You follow that person. Do you think Jesus would have been like, hey, you should put razor wire in the Rio Grande where people are trying to cross so that and those people that are trying to cross were escaping countries that our government has influenced and have messed over. Those people are escaping horrible situations. Do you think Jesus would have been like, hey, yo, you should put up razor wire and make sure that and watch these people drown in the Rio Grande? Or do you think Jesus would have been like, hey, yo, we should help those people? They're hurting. Obviously, they're coming from a bad place because they're leaving the land that they're from, seeking a better life.
Yeah,
If you're
it's and it's really aggravating because like I seldom get in debates, but there was one of these fundy Christians who, oh, they whipped out a Bible verse about uh I will give you the I will set your border from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines. It's basically trying to shoehorn a Bible for verse that could somehow justify what y'all are doing, and it's like, I think there's some more basic stuff in the Bible there about like loving thy neighbor and stuff. I can't remember who pushed that type of
Hold
stuff,
on.
but yeah.
Uh, uh, hold on a second. Hold on. No, I'm paraphrasing, but Jesus said, uh, Jesus made a parable about the good. I was paraphrasing the parable that Jesus used about the good Christian, about the good Jew and the bad one. And he was talking about it, if I remember correctly, with a bunch of priests and his disciples. And he ended that whole diatribe by saying, uh, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was, uh, when you're doing the best for the least of thee, that is when I'm with you, or something very similar to, is I'm misquoting the quote, and it was, the least among thee, right? Jesus would have been one of those migrants that these Republicans, that these Christian conservatives would have watched drown in that river, thinking that it's okay. When if you care, that if you think that immigrants are coming over here and they're doing more violence, even though statistics have shown multiple times that immigrant that immigrant uh human beings are in this country, non-documented human beings, immigrant human beings are less violent than native human beings in this country, even though statistically shows that, or that they are draining the economy, even though they pay taxes and they do not get any benefit from said government assistance because they're undocumented. We're not even going to talk about that. Well, we can talk about that. Or you think that they're taking away jobs, forgetting the fact that it's those same companies who are hiring them who are choosing not to pay you a living wage. You're fighting the wrong thing. The solution, if you want to go and talk, and this is when I'm going to talk to my Republican brothers and sisters, I'm probably going to say I'm sound crazy, but the solution would be, maybe we should send more judges to do the asylum work that those human beings are searching for, because they, under our documents, the American document, have a right to seek asylum. And we need more judges so that they can do the process of making sure that those human beings do not die and are not a burden on our system. Maybe we should put more people in the positions to help them, because that would be the better solution. But if your mind doesn't go there, and your mind's like, no, we just need to kick them out, yo, you sound a lot like the IDF, don't you?
Yeah, and I think it's like you're dealing with a population of people who's been just primed by, again, conservative conspiracy thinking. Plus, I mean, the Democrats haven't had a good record on immigration either. They have been just as likely to embrace tough on border rhetoric when it suits them politically. So we're in a political environment where when you have this really stupid, it is stupid Saturday morning cartoon thinking. Like there's an army of goons just waiting to cross the Rio Grande. Um, but you're able to have that kind of just stupid evil thinking because you have one party that has just openly courted and facilitated it, and another party that has largely spent most of it just looking the other way or negotiating actively with that kind of fascism, even up to like what's going on in Congress right now. The stuff that is in the bipartisan immigration bill, a lot of it are those same just draconian picadillos. And the only reason the Republicans aren't agreeing to push it through is because Donald Trump thinks it's more politically expedient to wait until he's president. But yeah, it's it's all that being said, plus, again, as we've talked about many times on the show before, the reason migrants come from South and Central America and Mexico largely has to do with the decades of neoliberalism facilitated by US corporations that have made those countries poorer, have made those countries more dangerous. Again, we don't have time to do a whole short history lesson on it, but again, most of the reasons those migrants are coming up to the US in the first place are because of problems that the US empire created. Now, I want to pivot real quick to the other piece of this, the other thing that was so shocking. So I found out about this news story on Thursday, right? It was either Thursday or no, it was maybe Thursday or Friday.
Oh,
And
okay.
I go into work and we play CBS Morning News at work. They didn't say anything about this story. The next day, they do a really quick, maybe 1 to 2 minute puff piece. They interview some migrants. They interview a sheriff at the border. They frame it all as like, oh, there's this kind of like a dispute at the border. Yeah, without emphasizing one, just how brutal what they're doing is, and two, the fact that 25 states were willing to essentially say, we will go to war with the federal government over this. How does a credible threat of civil war not make national news? It was so bizarre, and it's like I'm talking to my fiance. It's like, are we missing something here? Because it's like it seems like this should be a much bigger deal. And
Oh no,
part of
they
it,
were too busy. No, they were too
yeah.
busy looking at Taylor Swift at the NFL game because her boyfriend or whatever scored a touchdown. No, it
Yeah.
Republicans have. I don't know if you've seen those TYT interviews or those interviews from was it um
The ones where they go
Empire
out on
Files.
the ground and not
Yeah,
Empire Files.
those the no the interview, yeah, the interviews from the Trump rallies when they
Oh,
let
those, yes.
Republicans speak their minds years ago. When you asked me to come on the show, this is right when President Obama was ending his campaign. And people like
Or his
Alex Jones,
presidency, you mean?
yeah, his
Yeah.
presidency. He was in his presidency. And people like Alex Jones and his rhetoric and his ideology was was fringe. It was still fringe, right? It was crazy. People don't think like this, right? Now, no. The majority of about half. When Hillary said that half of Donald Trump's base are deplorables, she was right. It's sad to say, but she was right. Now, are some too far gone? Because some are too far gone because they drunk the Kool-Aid, and yes, a lot of those people are nuts, and now they're in a cult. But was some was also disenfranchised because of the lack of policies from our federal government that didn't help their lives. So some was there because they believed in that fiscal conservatism. Only people who are in the professional managerial class believe in that, and that's not the majority of our country. That's nowhere near the majority of our country. It's it's it bothers me, and I think going back to the reason why a lot of mainstream media news probably don't cover it is because people like Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, those nutcases have now become mainstream. Milo Yiannopoulos, remember, he used to be on Bill Maher. He used to be on CNN and MSNBC, and he's nuts. And culture is nuts. They believe literally in the same type of nutcase conspiracy crap as Alex Jones and all of them. But they're not hearing it from Alex Jones now. They're hearing it from Joe Rogan. Not to throw Joe Rogan under the bus, but you know what I mean. It's
Yeah, yeah.
we have normalized the right wing crazy. And when you hear right wingers say that we should, that like one of the dudes that was in the interview talking about that we should bring back public lynchings, and that the people that should be lynched is like Joe Biden, stuff like that, or believing in the Great Replacement theory, a uh, a conspiracy that even if you was to take that conspiracy seriously, you think that Democrats are trying to get more new voters from outside the country to come in to replace you, the good white person who's voting, the good American that's voting, to replace you from voting from the person that you were going to vote for anyway. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works. But if you don't understand that, you can believe this crazy conspiracy and think it's real. If you have a basic misunderstanding of how our system and our country works, but you have enough insight to see that something is wrong, you're looking at the wrong problem. It's not the person who's coming across the country who can't vote, who can't get government assistance, and who can't um who can barely speak a language that's trying to screw you over. It's the people telling you they're trying to screw you over.
The enemy does not cross the border. The enemy comes by limousine. That's what I've been thinking of.
Facts.
And like I say, I'm
Facts.
glad you point out like some too far gone, but it is important, especially if you're an organizer, you're a leftist at heart. It is really important to educate and have these kind of conversations because, as Lawrence is kind of pointing out, you've got a country full of people who have been sorely under or miseducated by our system. They certainly haven't been told the right stuff, and they know something's wrong, but without that kind of intervention, they might be vulnerable to believing some of this crackpot stuff that is to the point where it's making people feel justified to chop people up into bloody chunks at the border.
Or to
And it's even
watch people die while they're trying to struggle crossing a river. Your job as a border agent, if you see migrants coming, at the bare minimum, your job is to make sure that they get over safely so that if they're going to get deported, that they can. Your job is to make sure to save lives. If they have illegal things on them, then you confiscate them. You have a conversation with them. You try to make sure that they're okay. But if you see a child, the story that I'm reading that I read from this and it's coming from CNN. It was two children and a mother that died. How do you watch two children who are less than 10 years old? They were less than 10 years old. Two children and a mother died. How do you watch that and think that that's okay? And your job is to make sure to protect lives.
and kind of loop back to our earlier topic, it is the exact same kind of thinking that makes people say horrible things like there are no innocent people in Gaza. Um, and yeah,
You have completely and utterly, and that's when you have to tell people, dog, you got to find a new job. Walmart is always hiring. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
Amazon's a horrible company, but you might be better picking boxes, bro.
mhm,
Like
yeah.
those
So
people who watched that happen has to be fired. They gotta be fired.
yeah.
They gotta do something else.
So we're going to
And
kind of
life.
wrap things up, but I do have a final thought on this, and it's kind of speaking to again the media kind of ignoring it, and it to me it's part of a larger trend I've been seeing, especially in the last couple of months, where the mainstream media, it seems like there's like kind of a switch flipped, probably sometime in December, November, and they went from hyperventilating and this is more liberal media about Trump and the danger of a new Trump to it's almost like they're acting like the "This Is Fine" dog because you see them covering the primaries, and it's like the same kind of horse race script they use with every other election, and it's just really bizarre. And it's almost like while we are starting to see these cracks and fissures in, let's be straight. are the United States going to continue to be the United States? You have a mainstream media that's like, well, look at this issue, by golly. Oh, what's the poll numbers? Oh, Taylor Swift just showed up at the next football game. It's almost like a system that is in denial. And we're here to tell you, kind of working class analysts and stuff. It's like, nah, we'll be straight. This is gonna be a wild year, and and we're not. I'm not sure what's gonna happen,
Yeah.
but it ain't gonna be normal. I'm gonna tell you that much.
The fact that it's even case to the point, 'cause we talk about the reason why we call ourselves media ciphers is because we're decoding what the media does, right? We're decoding that cipher, right? It goes back like it just framing in perspective. Go back to what just happened in New Hampshire, right? The Democrats didn't want New Hampshire to go first, so because they're waiting for South Carolina because Biden won South Carolina, even though the write-in campaign that happened in New Hampshire during this horse race, Biden won the write-in campaign, but there was a large portion of them that said ceasefire now. A a large portion of the delegates in New Hampshire said, "Yo, we're writing in ceasefire because you need to understand where we're at. We're not voting for you." Uh, and the newspaper and at the same time they were saying that Trump won by a landslide. He only won by 53% of the votes.
Yeah, that's another side note.
53%.
Like, if there's anything surprising about the primaries, it's that Trump's not just taking a walk as much as I thought he would be. I think yeah, the contest in New Hampshire was actually fairly close between him and Nikki Haley. So, but
And and and
yeah,
and I hate to say this as someone who's just a casual analyst. If Nikki Haley may not win because I don't think Nikki Haley's going to win, even though a lot of conservative donors have backed her. I don't think she has a chance. But if it was her versus Biden in the election, she's going to railroad Biden. It's not even close. Multiple polls have shown that Nikki Haley beats Biden by 10 points. And it's not a joke. Not a joke, not a punchline. It's real facts. So for me, like I understand why. I get that a lot of the especially during the election year, a lot of their campaigns, a lot of their ads go to um those stations, those same stations. So they have to keep it interesting. But because they have a financial incentive to make sure that eyeballs are watching them to get the news, they also have a financial incentive they also have a perspective that can be skewed by it, that their own personal bias is going to be put in. Because if Trump wins or loses, their money is still okay. Meanwhile, people like us, average working class folk, we're the ones when their policies are all said and done are going to be screwed. But that's a whole different conversation. I I had a few quick hits that we could talk about, but I know that we're about to go, but just so because we've been talking about a lot of heavy stuff, I want us to laugh. Ben Shapiro said that hip hop is not a real genre of music on multiple interviews. He has dissed hip hop. He has dissed rap. He has said that it is not a real style of music, mostly because it was his coded way of saying black people don't create music. It was him being racist. Then an anti a white conservative from Canada who says has created songs how he hates hip hop, who's a conservative in hip hop, Thomas MacDonald, because he's the most popular conservative rapper in the world. He's not even that popular. He's actually really garbage. Uh he's trying
like
to be like
60-year-old
his
Trump
style.
voters watch his videos and it's like, oh, you're spitting bars, son.
He's
Oh,
he's
it's
no when you okay as a critic of hip hop, like we're both hip hop heads, right? And I will give credit to where credit's due. he can rhyme words. He can rhyme words well. He has good charisma. He's trying to be a lot like Yasin Bey, formerly known as Mos Def, but it's he's trying to be like Talib, Mos Def, Common, Lupe. He's trying to fit into that mold, Inspector Deck. He's trying to fit into that mold while being a conservative white rapper from Canada, talking about trans people and black people and wokeness and all this garbage, right? That man chose to get Ben Shapiro on the track. And Ben Shapiro they were trying to get Ben Shapiro to rap. Dog, when I tell you, I have not laughed. I I have not laughed that hard. I haven't laughed that hard since the Cat Williams interview. And the Cat Williams interview was amazing. That video was garbage. That video is garbage. It deserves to get Donkey of the Day. Charlemagne the God and the Breakfast Club need to fart and defecate on that track. It is doo-doo. It is garbage. And it's called facts.
Yeah. Emily showed me like a picture from it, and like she's the one who told me about it. And like I look at it and I'm like, that's AI. That can't be.
Nah,
That
bro.
can't be real.
I
No.
thought it was AI too, bro. I thought it was
God.
AI too, and I was like, no, it's real. I was like, no, that's really real.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Tom has a decent flow. He has a decent flow. He has some decent punchlines. He knows how to put rhymes together. But just because you know how to put rhymes together does not mean you are a good hip hop artist. Vanilla Ice put rhymes together too. Okay? Milli Vanilli was able to put rhymes together as well. Like it is bad. It's very bad.
It kind of reminds me like there's kind of a tendency among conservatives to like completely misunderstand rebel music. Is I mean, hip hop originally is like kind of a rebellious folk music. I mean, I don't need to tell you, but like
No.
it's
So
kind of like when you
for
see
those,
hear Paul Ryan who says like my favorite band is Rage Against the Machine, or like it's like one of these clowns. It's like they'll be like it's like this woke people saying I shouldn't say anti-trans stuff, and their response: it takes a nation of millions to hold us back. Are you saying I can't say the R word, N word or something? It's just like
it's it is. Yeah, you're right. It is amazing how many people miss the forest through the trees. Again, right. It's no. It goes and it's not just that. Outside of the fact that Ben Shapiro was talking about a genre of music that he doesn't like, and then tried to do the genre of music that he doesn't like to get more popular and to staying relevant, because obviously we have fallen out of the debate me bro circuit. It's not as popular as it used to be, and he's still trying to find a way to be relevant, and most people are not going to watch him because he's garbage and his arguments are garbage. If you watch his debate, he had a recent debate with Destiny recently, and I'm like, no, I don't even like Destiny. I don't really like Destiny. Vosh is okay once in a while, but there's times when Vosh will say some stuff and that sounds kind of racist. It's not kind of, it is, but it is what it is. He's a leftist, and I'm just like, I'm not gonna agree with everything that he says, but it is what it is. I don't even like Destiny. I don't even like Destiny. But the things that Ben was saying was complete garbage. Just garbage. And and he was missing the forest of the trees, even with his own logic. Another person, like you just said a conservative that likes a liberal thing, right? But then will turn on it and say it's too woke. Meghan McCain. Meghan McCain recently just went has a podcast and was talking about Jon Stewart coming back to the Daily Show, right? Now, for those who don't know, during the Bush administration, Jon Stewart was one of the first people, especially that was my political awakening. It was a comedian telling the news, but telling it from a honest perspective. And he was one of the first people who would show a Fox News clip, talk about how it was stupid, and then show facts. And it was funny. It was good. It was from a
Oh
leftist
yeah.
perspective. He's
I'm
back to
as
doing
as
it.
a as a fellow elder millennial, I can safely say the Daily Show is probably why you and I do this show. It's one of the big reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. The Daily Show, when Bill Maher was actually was an actual progressive back in the early 2000s, because I used to watch Bill Maher a lot. Roland Martin, those were some of my biggest people that I started to that helped me understand the world and politics when I started to grow up. He's back to doing the Daily Show, and she was like, I used to like Jon Stewart, but then he got too woke. I'm like, Megan, what? What are you talking about?
Uh,
My dear.
oh, so
Girl.
that's the embarrassing thing that just happened with Green Day. It's like don't want to be part of a MAGA agenda. You know, well, why do you have to make it look? It's like, what did you think that song was about?
Right?
It's like,
Y'all are not
uh,
y'all. Oh my God! Like, I need y'all to read a book, go touch grass.
uh,
I need, I need you, I need you to go touch reality,
yeah,
because obviously you are missing, baby. You are missing it,
I think
and it,
so. Yeah, yeah.
and I find it hilarious because it's stories like that I find funny, especially just light stories. And there was a story that I do want to speak about just for a hot second because I know we're about to leave. Just for a hot second, there was a story that we said that we will be doing extra videos throughout the week that because we have too much content that we'd be putting in the group chat that we don't get to. So this will be one of the stories. Did a black coder there was this black coder that Dr. Richie, shout out to Dr. Richie, Indisputable, and his other radio show, because I actually listen to his radio show
Mhm.
and also to DL Hughley's radio shows. They're actually really good. There was a black coder that he featured that when these states were talking about critical race theory and banning books, and they had hotlines to help them cancel teachers or cancel books or things of that nature. There was this black coder that used an algorithm to get other people to organize to troll those hotlines, to troll those websites and troll those hotlines, and they shut them down. I want to highlight that story because when you have when young people, not just young people, but of all ages, when we organize and come together, we can fight back against the ignorance that is constantly oppressing us daily. And that's one of the stories that we're going to talk about. Also, a black also there was this black official who was trying her best to stamp out racism and discrimination in the school system, and then she had to turn around and sue the school system for how they discriminated against her. It's not a joke, not a punchline. It's real facts. We're gonna talk about that, but on on the bonus clip. The bonus clip. That's what we're gonna probably have to call it.
All right. Well, with that, I think I'm gonna let you go, Lawrence. I want to remind everybody, thank you for listening. If you want to go back and listen to the whole show, maybe you tuned in halfway through, whatever. We are online. This is gonna be on our YouTube. It'll be Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. You can find them on most podcasting apps. Um, go to our Facebook page for all those updates and stuff. Lawrence, thanks for joining us. You have yourself a
All right.
fantastic night. And until next time, everybody, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.